Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bring Your Big Energy podcast. Today, I'm here with Carrie Casey West. Hello, Carrie.
Hey, how are you? It's good to see you
And
again.
I was just thinking the same. It's so great to see your smiling face. So, thank you for joining us on the show today.
It's so exciting to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Great. So great. Same. So, as I said, I'm joined today by Carrie Casey West, and this is going to be a powerful conversation. Carrie, a little bit about Carrie, is a best-selling author. She's a speaker, a narrative coach who helps people rewrite the stories that shape their lives, work, and leadership. Whoa, I'm here for that. With an MFA in filmmaking from the American Film Institute and a background in counseling psychology from Penn State, she really brings this unique blend of deep insight into human behavior and storytelling. So, two of my very favorite things. Her work centers around one powerful idea, and that is the idea that when you change your story, you change your life. Her latest book, Life Rewritten, became an international bestseller, and it reflects her core belief that the pen is in your hand. But what makes this conversation especially meaningful is that this work is just not theoretical for Carrie, it's deeply personal. So her story includes a powerful chapter about her relationship with her father, which we'll talk through, and how that relationship evolved, particularly during a time as he was farther on in life and she was writing this book. So, Carrie, I'm going to let you just take us back, spend a luxurious time as a storyteller, and just tell us your story in your own words.
Well, it's a long story.
We've got time.
Okay, good. Well, I can be brief. It was like a lot of people, like so many people. We didn't have the greatest start to life. My parents probably shouldn't have had kids, but
Mm.
that's what you did. When I was born, that's what parents did. We're told the American dream or the dream of being a human being is you go to school, you get married, you have kids, you retire, you sit around and wait till your last breath. Never works that way, does it?
No, not so much.
No, never does. But we try. We try to fit into that script that is this overarching view of what life is. We hear people say, "Well, I didn't get married when I was 18. Oh my God. I better find a spouse or a significant other or whatever." And it's starting to get upended a little bit. I think a lot of people now are starting to say, "Wait a minute, does that work for me?" But at the time I was born, it was the practice. That's what people did. And my parents didn't want me. They didn't
Mm.
want me. And I was rejected, but I wasn't put up for adoption, so my parents kept me, but didn't take care of me. Feeding was when mom was in the mood, diaper changing, hated diapers. Dad more so really just wanted to pretend I wasn't there. Um, and that made my life really traumatic. When you're a kid and you don't know where your next meal's coming from, you're traumatized. I grew up just wanting so much love and affection from my parents and never got it. Never,
Yeah,
ever, ever got it, except on the day my dad died. I was
love it.
24 years old and I was visiting for Thanksgiving. I was the only one in my family. I have two older siblings and a younger sibling. And again, they kept having kids that they never wanted. It was crazy. But I was the only one home. I was getting ready to drive back to DC. We lived in Pittsburgh at the time. And I was so bored waiting for Sunday and I could drive home to DC. And I said, I'm going to go out and see a friend and I'm going to borrow your car. And they said, okay. And my dad took my hand and said, I love you, don't you? What?
Surprising.
What? Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Dad. Sure. I got to go. And I get in the car and I start driving to go and see my friend. And I got this pain just shooting up the side of my face. And I get to the place where we were meeting and I said, "Look, I'm so sorry, but I'm really in pain. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go home." So I get home about 30 minutes later and there's a bunch of cars in the driveway and in front of the house. And it's like, oh, it's a Saturday night. Yeah, my parents are never social. I have no idea what this was. Well, my dad died. He died in the 30 minutes that I was gone. Had a massive coronary infarction, which before that night I probably would have laughed at that. But I walk into this zone of people sitting with my mom, and dad had had a heart attack. I probably wasn't even out of the driveway. And he grabbed his chest and said to my mom, "Call an ambulance." And my mom said she knew then that there was something wrong because dad hated doctors. He was 62 years old and he
Mhm.
was gone. And he left me. He dropped this bomb on me about, I love you, don't you? And then dies. It's like, what do you do with that?
Yeah.
Something I wanted all my life. And it's like, so I hit rock bottom. I really did. I didn't know where to go with that information. It seemed like he invalidated the first 24 years of my life with that one statement. And I was angry. I was distraught. I was grieving. I had so many emotions, and it brought up all the emotions I had as a kid and didn't know where to put them. And so I just fell apart. I started drinking. I stopped eating. I just lived on beer, cases of beer in my refrigerator. And that was
Mhm.
it, and it was then when I hit rock bottom, I said, "Alright, I gotta do something about this. I can't I'm 24 years old, I can't just be drinking beer, my life is screwed up. Do I want to keep on this path?" And I just started the search then. That was it, to understand what was going on. So
You
that's
said
the journey.
well, and it's such a powerful statement of he invalidated the last 24 years. What do you mean by invalidated?
24 years, I so wanted his love. I jumped up and down. He was the
Mm,
star of my movie. I would do anything
mm,
to get his attention. He was really good with numbers, so I got really good with math. He loved card games, so I learned to play card. I did anything to try to get him to say, "I see you, I love you, be a part of my life." I got nothing. Nothing. I
mm,
had no idea. I just thought there was something so grossly wrong with me. Because you
mm,
know how kids fill in the blanks, right? They
mhm.
need you to give them information. Well, parents are very reluctant to give kids information. One, they don't know how. Two, they don't know how much. Three, they try to say, well, the kids don't understand anyway, which is a real disservice because, we start understanding stuff almost immediately. Some psychologists say takes about 4 months before you really start grokking things. But in the first 4 months, we're absorbing emotions. Emotions are a great way to communicate. My parents were so distraught in their own lives that I absorbed all those emotions and I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. You see where I'm going with this, where it
Well,
builds this.
well, now I'm like, what have I done as a parent? Let me rethink my whole life, Carrie. My gosh, I'm just well, I mean, kind of, but so it's fascinating then if you're living your life, and again, many people we probably all are. We probably all have someone in our life, but we're
Absolutely.
trying to be they're the star of our movie, as you said.
Yeah.
So when the star of your movie's gone, what does that create?
Yep. 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 It created a vacuum.
Yeah.
Created a vacuum. It screwed me up for everything I thought, and then all of a sudden, he says he loves me, and then he's gone. And I
Yeah.
had no mental capacity because I had no insights, I had no ideas about my whole life up to that point was about survival. I had to learn to feed myself. Well, when I became around 2 years old, my mom fed me more because I could sit at the table. She didn't have to do something special.
Yeah.
And so I was feeding more, but I also started taking care of my younger sister, making sure she got fed. This is 2.5 years old. So
Yeah.
I didn't have a childhood. And
Yeah.
it was more jumping from one survival mechanism to another. And, then at the same time, still trying to get my parents' notice. It wasn't until I started this journey that I realized my mom had mental issues
Mm,
and not only mental issues, she was a bit of a narcissist, and my dad just was shut down. This was not the life he wanted for himself at all. And so he just kind of gave up. He threw in the towel. None of those had anything to do with me.
mm,
I was collateral damage in a war that wasn't mine.
mm.
This was
Wow. Such a statement, collateral damage in a war that wasn't mine. I mean,
yeah,
how many people out there listening have lived that or have been there and
yeah.
never thought of it that way? Because you're right. As humans and as empaths or as women or as name your identity, we absorb. You're right. We take in. Okay. So now dad's gone.
Mhm.
You go through this, you hit your rock bottom. Carrie,
Mhm.
what comes next for you on this story, on this journey? What comes next?
I went to the church. I
Mhm.
went to therapy. I wanted answers. I wanted to understand why. For me, the church wasn't helpful. When I said, "Why did this happen?" the priest said, "God has a plan. Don't question it." And it's like, kind of have to because I'm kind of hurting here. I'm kind of
Here
suffering.
for the questions.
I know this is not to knock religion or the church at all. This is just to say this was my personal journey. That didn't work, so I hired therapists. I went to group therapy. I went to special therapy. I went one-on-one. I even hired a couples coach because I felt like I was trying to have this relationship with my dad and said, "What
Mhm.
is the dynamic here?" Because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand my parents' story. I just saw it from my perspective. Does that make sense when I say
Yeah,
my perspective, right? That
yeah,
does. My perspective was, it's got to be me. Why don't these people accept me? Why don't they like me? We do this in our relationships because I had trouble relating to other people because I never had a solid foundation of what it
yeah.
means to have a relationship. So I didn't know how to be in relationship with other people.
Mhm.
And instead, I kept trying to find people like my parents that would reject me. That's what I knew about relationships, that I had no experience with a healthy relationship. And so after the therapy, after all that, I started doing personal development, personal growth, meditation, metaphysics, all of it. All of it. I was all
Mhm.
in. And I
Mhm.
was still in a lot of emotional and psychological pain. I was still traumatized by this experience. So, for some strange reason, because work was really weird for me, I had all these degrees, but I just was never happy. I would just take jobs that paid me a lot of money because we were poor. We didn't. I told myself if my parents would have had money, they would have wanted me. I would have been accepted. Because, kids need to make sense. So they make these connections. And
Mhm.
maybe if my parents had money, we would have been a happy family, because we watched all the TV shows about a happy family,
Yeah.
and the girls are called Princess and Daddy loves them. And so I had this story running in my head about, well, if my parents had money, if they were strong in a stronger financial position, then everything would have been okay. So I would work jobs I hated, but paid me very well. And what I really wanted to do was tell stories. Stories were critical in keeping me alive. I told myself stories so I could get through a lot of the crap I was dealing with. And so I applied for and got accepted at film school at the American Film Institute, which is such a prestigious school. And I still to this day think, how in the heck did I do that? I mean, I had such low self esteem and such self loathing. I don't know how I did it, but I did. And on one of our film projects, we're sitting there talking about, plots and characters and themes and crises and challenges. And I went, oh my God, I think all the work I'd been doing before then laid a foundation that when we started seeing that, I started to put together the narrative of my life
Mm.
and on my journey. And the characters of my parents were antagonists. Even though I wanted to make my dad the star, he was really an antagonist. My mom was definitely. My older sister was my foil. I remembered somebody, an eighth grade teacher, who tried to be my mentor, but I was, again, did not know how to let that in.
Mm.
So I saw all these things play out, and I thought, "Well, wait a minute. We're rewriting these stories here. We're deciding what do we want the ending to be? We want the audience to walk away feeling X. We want them to feel like good always wins over evil. Love always wins. We want all these great endings. And it's like, so right now, the ending of my personal story is life sucks and then you die.
Mhm.
If I
I
want my
believe I
life
should
to
watch that movie.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of people have that movie.
You're
And and I thought, "All right, can I change that ending?" So I started
real
l
quick, Carrie, at what point in your life how old are you-ish in this? Just to give us an idea of
I'm
where in your
30,
so
30.
you're 30, so you're 4 years out of this rock bottom, rebuilding, and you're already at this point at 30 where, like, wait, I don't want my life to end being like the crappy story. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
walk
You got
in
the
and
timeline. Got it here.
okay.
Good. That's a great question, by the way. It's important to know. So I just started taking it apart, but I first had to understand the characters because when you look at the characters in your story, you really get a clue of what's going on with you because so many of us characters when you are in relationship, it is the fastest way to grow because they can reflect your inner story
Mm,
immediately. So I looked, that was the first thing I did, and that's when I understood that my mom had mental health issues and she had a crappy beginning. Stories are generational. Our parents learned their stories from their parents, who learned them from their parents, who learned them from their parents. You know, we can look at something as simple as I I'm cooking in the kitchen and I always make rice this way because that's what mom did. My mother never sat down and taught me how to make rice, but I observed her and that's how I knew you made rice. And
mhm.
I'm now in a great relationship and I watch him make rice and it's like, you're doing it wrong. Have you been in that situation? This makes sense, right?
Yeah,
When you're in relationship, and my greatest one is dishwashers. I
yeah,
learned how to load the dishwasher as a kid, and now my husband loads the dishwasher. I have to redo it. And he
yes,
just watches me and says, "You're nuts." And it's like, "No, this is how dishwa." It's we get that from our parents. Now my parents, my grandparents didn't have dishwashers, so my mom made this story up. But
yeah,
this is how we take things along. Now, that's a very simple example, but if we're picking up these clues from our parents, what else are we picking up? I'll tell you
right.
what, we're picking up all of them, right?
Yes,
That's
yes,
where we learn. We observe them, we hear them. Oftentimes, it's not what they say. Sometimes they say, "Do what I do what I say, not what I do." Well, we're
yes.
picking up what they do.
Right, right, exactly. Because what they
It's
say
a
is not always the real thing.
yeah, it's not a you
It's
know?
not always right the way they did it. Like, my best friend happens to be a person that came from a very decent upbringing, so they hire people to do things.
Mhm.
I came from a modest, lower middle class, maybe you would call it. We just built what we had to build because that's what we could afford to do.
Yeah.
And so now she's teaching me, "Why are you building IKEA furniture? Pay someone to do it." And I'm like, "Whoa, really?" And so it's funny we get into these well, again, with your example, it's a small example, but, and then you take that and you amplify it towards, like, the way that
Yeah.
a couple interacts together. Who
Absolutely.
carries the weight? Who carries the emotion? You know, because I think there's different players. I think if you've ever studied, you probably has, interfamily system works, right? Like,
Yep,
that's
yep, yeah.
fascinating stuff.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
I
oh,
love
yeah.
classes.
And if you come into a relationship that you're supposed to be the housekeeper and the mother and the stay-at-home mom, and your partner comes in and says, "Why aren't you working?" "Well,
Yes.
I'm the mom. I have the kids. I gotta take care of the house and the kids." And he's kinda like, hopefully you talk about this before you get married because
Right.
that's where a lot of relationships go crazy. You get married and it activates this marriage script of how you saw your parents interact, and what you're bringing into this is all these things your stories around marriage. I mean, that's what it was when Simon and I got together. The first couple of years with or first couple of months when we moved in together, I tried to clean the house and do the cooking and go grocery shopping, and guess what? I hate cleaning.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at cooking, not interested, but I'll be okay with the grocery shopping. And I got so frustrated, and he looked at me and he said, "Who told you you had to cook and clean? That's not my expectation of this."
Yes,
Because
and
I
it's
was like, "I can't do this anymore." He goes, "Well, who told you to? You just
yeah,
came in here and tried to clean the house and make all the meals." He said, "I love to cook." Great. So now he does all the cooking. We have somebody to come in and do the cleaning, and he does a lot of the grocery shopping. So,
and it's a win-win. Yeah, my husband
yeah,
does all the cooking and grocerying, but I'm happy to go mow the lawn. I
there you
literally
go.
don't mind doing it, and so
There you go.
so, okay, so you're at film school, you have this or thereafter, you're in your 30s and you're realizing, like, "Wait a second," as we talk about stories and characters and narrators, which is also an important thing to
Yep.
talk through,
Yep.
you're like, Wait, I might wanna pen my life differently,
Yep.
potentially." So
Yep.
what then happens for you?
Well, that's when I really started to understand my parents and all my siblings. And the first thing I did was I forgave them. I had compassion when I knew and understood what my parents' lives were like. All the anger went away. It melted away. And I felt bad for them. I really had compassion for them. They didn't have the tools. They didn't have the desire to go out and discover their pain. They
Mm,
just accepted that that was part of their life. And see, that's the issue. Are you willing to become uncomfortable? 'Cause so many times people will stick with the familiar, even if
yes.
it's crappy, because the uncomfortable unknown is worse. Great example of this. Well, you can't tell, but a little bit, I have my little scar here. I just had eye surgery. I had a blocked tear duct. And I didn't know exactly what was going on, but the doctor said, here's a procedure that'll 95% clear it out. We have to put you under and we go in and we clear out the tear duct. I'm in I'm in the surgery center and I understand they're going to put me out like anesthesia and I'm like, I'm a control freak. I don't want to be under
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. What's even happening? Yeah.
And the doctor said to me, you don't have to do this. And I actually thought about it and I said, so am I gonna be okay with it was like I was constantly crying because the tear
Yeah.
ducts had nowhere to go. So can I be okay with that? Would I rather stick with this discomfort
Yes.
because I'm too afraid to try
Yes.
this out? And I'm really glad I said, okay, we'll do it. I'm really glad because the tear ducts had your tears without going into it. I had a little stone stuck in my tear duct. And this
Whoa.
was the only way to get it out. And
What's the best way to make that decision, uncomfortable or known?
that's what we all do, I think, every day, don't
Yeah,
we?
we do.
Every day. In the work I do now, it's about awareness. The first step is always awareness. And in that moment of awareness, and this just happened a couple weeks ago, I really had an even deeper understanding of why we would rather stick with the discomfort because it's better than what we don't know. Do you ever hear the phrase in politicians it's all the time when you have a new politician come up and somebody says, "Oh, we got to vote for that person." And it's like, well, they're all devils, so let's just stay with the devil we know.
Yes, yes.
So there's this collective unconsciousness that says the unknown is scary. The unknown is uncomfortable. Let's stay status quo. Don't rock the boat.
Mhm.
You don't want to get disappointed. Any of these sound familiar to you?
Yes, yes.
And in any number of ways, we were raised. My mom would always tell me, these are the rules. And it's like, well, what if those aren't the rules? Well, I don't want you to go and try to break those rules. I don't want you to be disappointed. I'm going to be disappointed anyway. So maybe I should try. That's why
Yeah,
so many people won't even try.
yeah.
'Cause that terror of walking away from yeah, my life sucks, but at least I know it.
Yeah, in the coaching world, we call it immunity to change. It's hard for me to get out today.
Oh, I
Immunity.
like that.
Women, like all of humans have a natural default to stay with the known. They've actually done studies. There's this one study that we learned about in coaching certification class that says that if they told, like, say, a group of 100 people that they had to change their eating habits or they would die, 90% didn't change their eating habits
Yep,
because the change was so much harder for them, and that world was more known than what if I tried to push through that change for something different. So I
yep,
completely agree. So when you apply this change to now you're rewriting your story.
uh-huh.
So what are you applying to that as you start to rewrite your story then on your journey?
Well, like I said, it starts with awareness,
Yeah.
and then when you understand where it came from, when you understand that this belief you have that life is uncomfortable, sometimes there's another piece of it, you said the immunity to change. There's brain also prefers coherence. Was your brain develops from a kid, you got the patterns on there. So your brain is not really happy about having to shift stuff around. We like coherence, we like status
Yeah.
quo, we like the way things run. When you start changing things up, your brain starts firing up. The amygdala, the cerebellum, it's fight or flight. So you start flooding yourself with adrenaline and all this anxiety comes up. That anxiety is just your brain saying, hold on, here's our path. You're stepping off the path. Once you understand that, you can say, okay, brain, I know that this isn't real. When the old voices start up, that's when you have to really take that moment and question it and say, who's talking to me now? And when you can do that, you can remember that you're an adult and you have the skills and you can make new choices. But that takes practice and it takes time. I was just at a friend seeing a friend this past weekend, and she knew me through some of the rougher part. I hadn't seen her in 30 years. And she said, "I just can't get over the person you are now." And I said, "Read my book. It'll tell you how I did it." And
Yeah.
she's like, "If you did it, anybody can." She said, "But how did you do it?" I said, "Here's the key. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic pill, there's no magic technique. If you go to a workshop and they say, "The techniques will change your life today," walk away. You have to understand how your brain works. If you want lasting change, if you want some sort of change that'll last for a half a minute, if you want lasting change, you have to do the work. You have to start rewiring your brain. And I do that with micro moments of change. When you get triggered and that anxiety comes up, step back. Don't react. Don't fire off that email. Don't call that customer service person and say, "What an idiot you are." Take a breath. That starts rewiring your brain. Do you feel the difference? You feel that?
It feels good.
But it takes time. It takes some effort. It takes paying attention. It takes awareness.
Yes.
But listen, I did it in 40 years, but you don't have to take that long. You can take 6 months. 6 months. I mean, you can change in 30 days. You really can.
Yeah. If
I
you're willing to be open and you're willing to push through and you're willing to
Yes.
take the change,
Yes.
right?
And that's why getting a good coach is also important
Yeah.
because when you feel like, okay, I've done the breathing, I've done this interruption, I've done all these things you suggested, and I still feel this anxiety, call me.
Yes.
I'll talk you through it.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Carrie, what does life rewritten, a good life rewritten, what are the elements of that?
First of all, awareness.
Okay.
And then I have my life rewrite system, and it's 5 areas. Awareness, then discovery. And this is where you go to your origin story. This is where you understand your family dynamics and their family dynamics and extended family and society. Then you have to make the connection. How is that operating? How is that old information operating in my life today? What's the pattern? What's the pattern? When somebody said, "I always go out with the wrong people. I always work with why do I always end up that interview, they were so great. Why did they turn into idiots? Why do I always end up in a toxic work environment?" Patterns. What's that connection? Me, I kept looking for my father. I knew right away. With dating, I was looking for if I could get some guy to love me, a broken guy guy I thought was broken. By the way, nobody's broken. It's old stories that have running. If I could fix them and make them love me, then dad will love me. It never
Mhm.
works out that way. That's the pattern. So making that connection, you have your awareness, the discovery, you've made the connection. Then from that, you get the understanding. And
Absolutely.
that's where you can start looking at the plots that have brought you to where you are today. And then you start looking at what great things did you get out of it? Like for me, this level of determination, powerful.
Mhm.
This level of willing to be myself. Mom used to call me the black sheep, but she did it to shame me and make me feel terrible. And I did. And then I looked at that and said, no, being the black sheep probably was another way I saved my life because I didn't buy into her program.
Mhm.
I forged my own path. It was terrible, it was difficult, but I did it, and now I'm forging a whole new path, which is happening a lot faster, guys. Now as you keep doing this, everything happens faster. So then I had that understanding, and then it's change. Then you
Mhm.
can really let in lasting change. And by the way, even with lasting change, you have days, like I said, on the operating table a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh, I don't know that I want to do this. I think I might want to stick with the familiar rather than go under. But you work through it faster. Things that used to trigger me and shut me down for days, never. I get triggered. I just don't get shut down for days.
Mhm. Yeah, I talk a lot about that in coaching with clients too who want to make these big sweeping changes, which is great, of course, but like
Hmm.
bite-sizing it out and
Hmm.
knowing it's gonna happen in increments. And if
Hmm.
you have something you're working on, it doesn't mean you're gonna change that area of development overnight. It just means that you wanna shorten the window between, like you said, like the situation and a bad reaction or, and so it's like stopping that cycle. So if you these steps are just so powerful. So I heard you say awareness, discovery, pattern connection, understanding, and lasting change. Which one's the hardest for people to get their hands around?
Awareness.
And why is that?
We're on automatic pilot. The
Mhm.
patterns, and you don't want to acknowledge patterns. Most people, if and until, and this is another key point that I know you'll understand. You sometimes need a life event to encourage you to
Mhm.
take this journey.
Yeah.
For me, it was hitting rock bottom with my dad dying. For some people, it's I've fallen in love and I want to be the best person I can be. Or you're in a relationship that's about to go south because you're not being the best person you want to be. And you realize, I better take a look at myself. You have to reach that point where you've tried so many things that you have to start knowing that it's an inside job. Another external technique, another external situation is not going to deal with what's going on in here. Simon's writing another book in the series called Business Rewritten. And in it, he talks about how Lego, I love Legos. I don't know. And they're such a great thing. Well, the company was really great for a while, and then they hit a snag and started struggling and losing money, and they almost had to go bankrupt and shut down or get a buyer. And the owners, it was a family that owned it, said, we want to maintain our vision. So they brought in this very wise CEO, and he said, we have to look inside ourselves and see what happened. And he said, any business that's having struggles, they kind of look outside and say, who can we bring in who will fix us, when they need to look inside at what went wrong. Was it our supply chain? Was it our marketing? Did our vision change? And they had to go back to where they came from and understand where on the journey things started to go south. And I love that analogy because that's what we need to do is don't look outside, look inside. And then the discovery can be tricky, but the willingness to go inside, to become self-aware is sometimes the place where I find I struggle with clients the most. Do you? I mean, is that something you see as well?
I absolutely agree. There's a Taylor Swift lyric, it says, I look directly in the sun, but never in the mirror." And that always gets me because 'cause we're in our lives, we'll look at a lot of hard things, we'll go through a lot of hard things, but it's the looking in the mirror that people, I think, really struggle with.
Okay.
And I think it's because they think they are defined by their past often, and so they don't wanna look at it because they think it's gonna determine their future, and they don't know how to shore the 2 of them up, is my thought sometimes.
I think everyone listening to this needs to take out a pen and write it down because I'm doing that right now. Say that quote again from Taylor Swift.
I'm gonna mess it up, and, Taylor's gonna be so mad at me, but it's something about, like, I look directly in the sun, but never in the mirror. 'Cause, you're not supposed to look at the sun, it's very damaging. It's very bad for you,
No,
but
it is,
she'll do that over the mirror.
yeah,
So
but
it creates this crazy, like
But here's the value of that. Here's the
mhm,
value of what you said. We're so afraid to look at ourselves. And I think part of it's because what happens when I change?
mm,
What happens when I change? Is my relationship going to end? I don't want to be
mhm,
single again. Yeah, my relationship's not great, but being single is worse. All my single friends are struggling, and oh, the dating scene sucks. I don't want to get out there again. Or am I going to lose all my friends? You know what? I will tell you, 5 years ago, I lost one of my main friend groups. And I
mhm,
needed to because I realized I was having struggles trusting women. So I joined this friend group of women I couldn't trust.
mhm,
And as I put that together, I went, oh my God, this is not healthy for me. And I left it. But it was the only friend group I knew for like 8 years. It was hard to do that. And it took guts and courage and willingness. But now I have all these great friends and we're supportive and we hang out and there's no competition and trying to, all that other stuff.
mhm.
But people are afraid when you look in the mirror that means I'm gonna have to change my life, and you know what? You're right, sometimes that's what's happened.
Often your identity that you're so tied to as well,
Thank you.
and that's where people really struggle too. I wanna ask you something, it's a little bit off that beaten path, but I'm just cognizant we only have so much time left, is you talked a lot about patterns and breaking patterns, and that's where I see also a lot of people struggle. What is your thought process on breaking patterns?
Well, you have to recognize what it is. You have to understand why what the pattern is, and that's why understanding where it came from. Like I said, with dating, I was always dating the guy that I could try to fix, but I didn't understand that. I knew I was doing it. I mean,
Mhm.
and you could ask anybody who knew me, yeah, Carrie keeps dating the wrong guys. But you need to know that until I recognized it, and then I had to understand the root cause of it. I knew I was dating terrible people for me, but then I had to understand why. Why am I constantly looking for love in all the wrong places? We've heard that.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was because I had this issue with, again, the star of my life, my father. I wanted his love so badly. I would go out with these guys who would reject me because if I could just prove I'm worthy.
Mhm.
But until I understood that why, it didn't resolve. And then I got so happy with my life. I was so content. And remember, I barely dated anyone for more than a minute. And then at 55 years old, I'm in a relationship with Simon. And he
Mm.
was he was a friend. We never went on a date. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's like, huh, I think we're more than friends. We both did it almost
Nailed
the
it.
same time. We've been together ever since. Never went on a date, and when I said that to him, and he said, "Wanna go out to dinner?" Yeah, like, "All right." So, yeah, yeah, but it was when I finally said, I don't need to find my dad anymore."
Mhm.
Now, I had done that way before, and there were a couple of guys that seemed to be interested in me, but I thought about it, and it's like, "You know what? I'm kinda liking being single." I don't know that I ever.
It's gotta be the right time as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
as someone that knows how to write a good story, a good plot, as a filmmaker, as an author, as a storyteller, if someone out there listening is right now is like, okay, I'm hearing this. I'm hearing what Carrie and Stacey are talking about, and I want to rewrite my story. And I know you gave us some steps, but like, what advice would you give them for like, if you want, what elements, if I really want to rewrite my good story, my next best chapter, my life story, what do you want them to know?
Well, first of all, I want you to know it's possible and it can be fun. Of all the personal development work I ever did, some of them would say, you must write down every belief you have about that topic. And it's like, do I really want to know every belief? But when you look at your life as a story and you pretend you're sitting in the audience and you're observing your life unfold before you, it all becomes crystal clear.
Mm.
And sometimes that awareness is enough to shift you. When you
Mhm.
know. Oh my god. Have you ever had that moment where you finally understand that you're getting in your own way
Mhm.
and it all just kind of you almost feel like the dominoes are clicking in together, don't you?
Mhm.
And you just go,
Mm. Love this thought of invitation, if you will, for someone to sit back. That's maybe a good place to start is
"Mhm,
sitting back and going like, okay. And I love a good whiteboard or those 3M sticky things. Okay. If I was going to storyboard, like back in the old days, if I was going to storyboard my life, if I was going to put it there and I was going to be watching it from a seat in the audience, first of all, who would play me? Reese Witherspoon, of course. But what would be happening on that story? What would be happening on that screen? What would be, and of course, that's the great thing about stories. What I'm just making this connection is they look like this. They have ups and downs. Yet society, we're built into like our professional life going up and to the right. When the reality is our life stories should look like this. They absolutely should, or it's not interesting. Like you've
right,
watched a
right,
movie where it's
right."
like this. It's like, I'm sure it won some awards, but man, is it bored. Like, are
Yep,
you bored for years, right?
yep.
So I'm sort of having this epiphany in that moment, but I love that invitation of doing that where,
And you said something really great. I've often said to clients, "Who would play you in a movie?"
yeah, right.
And when they pick, like, a character actor, one person picked Joe Pesci, and it's like, he's a gangster and he's a thug in most of his movies.
Very swelling, right.
Yeah, why aren't you picking somebody like George Clooney or Matt Damon or Ben Affleck, and but that's how they see themselves.
Yeah, that's absolutely
It's
true.
it's such a clue, and I also suggest, like you said, remember when you're kids and the teacher says to draw a picture of your family?
Mhm.
I sometimes say to my 70-year-old clients, "Get pictures out of magazines and show me your family.
Mm,
Make a vision board of your family and your life growing up."
mhm.
You'd
Yeah,
be surprised. What do you mean to get back to your kid? Get to the kid inside of you. When you're in grade school and they tell you to do that, then they send the picture home and say, "Oh my god, they painted you red and they didn't include their younger sister."
Yep,
There's a psychological reason they do that.
yep, yeah.
If they paint your house under storms and lightning bolts coming your way, that's telling them something if your kid is doing that. So get back to your kid and do a vision board or do it by hand if you feel like
Mhm,
drawing it by hand, but
mhm.
draw it out. Have fun with it.
Yeah, we're not letting our creativity, I don't think, bloom in the way that we were when we were children, of course, and so
Yeah,
I
or
do
our
think
imagination. I mean, there's so much good stuff there.
there is so much good stuff there. How is your life different now that you've been through these journey upon journeys?
The biggest way I was thinking about this today. We grew up, there were 6 of us in a 1,000 square foot house, and it was crowded, it was cramped, it was dirty all the time, it was just a mess. And I look at my life now, I'm living in a beautiful home in Santa Barbara, California. The sun's always shining. It's a big house. It's 3,600 square feet for 2 of us, except our dog has a bed in every room. Our dog is really the one. He thinks it's his house and we're his hired help.
Yeah.
And I mean, first of all, I love the space. I think that was the biggest clue is that I always felt so cramped growing up. And now
Mhm,
we have space and I have a beautiful yard and I can go out in nature and there's a lot of peace in my life. And
mhm,
after the trauma I endured, and again, life isn't about to be perfect. This isn't all rainbows and sunshines. And anybody who's in a relationship knows that there's days you wake up and say, he
mhm,
drives me crazy. She drives me crazy. I, of
mhm.
course, am perfect. So
Yes.
he's never worrying about me, right? Right? Isn't that true,
Yeah,
Stacey? Your husband, your partner
so
never
true,
has to worry about you. You're
so
good.
true.
But relationships are hard work. They really are.
Yeah.
But I'm in a good one for the first time and I
Mhm.
have great friends. I have support. I have love. Love is crazy. And I can actually say to my dad now, I love you too, Dad. And I mean it.
Carrie, where can people find out about you? I'll put it in the show notes as well, but where should they be checking out your book after book after book and all the things that you're doing?
Yep. CarrieCaseyWest.com. You can see how you spell it on the screen. I don't know if you're seeing this, but put it in the show notes. And
Yeah.
by the way, I love your show. I listened to a couple of them. They're
Oh,
really
thank
powerful.
you. Thank you. We're
Yes,
pretty
they're
proud of it.
very powerful. Yep, yep. But CarrieCaseyWest.com. I've got so much on that website now. It's crazy. But
Great.
drop me a line. Drop me a line. All my contact information is there. I love talking about stories, and in 15 minutes, we could get to one of your biggest patterns that's holding you back.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for all your contributions. And thank you for just sharing so much with the audience. We appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this. It's so important to keep having these stories get out in the world.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Thanks.